Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the weekly AJA Zoom event. Welcome to everyone who's watching live on Zoom and on Facebook, and to those hearing the replay on J-Air Community Radio and on YouTube. My name is Robert Gregory, and tonight we'll be exploring the issues of illegal Bedouin encroachment on Jewish-owned land across Israel, as well as a case study in the vicinity of Maale Adumim and the peaceful approaches that locals are taking to deal with the threat. If you want to ask a question tonight, raise your hand with the react button and we'll try to get to as many as we can. I'm going to hand over now to Australian-Israeli Mark Schneider, who will introduce himself and tonight's speakers, who we're very honored to have. Thank you, Mark.
Yes, hello everyone, and great to see some old friends there joining us this evening. My name is Mark Schneider. I moved from Sydney to Maale Adumim just about 6 years ago, and yeah, it's great to have this opportunity to talk to the Jewish community about some of the issues in my backyard that I think are very, very important. Um, it's been great living in Maale Adumim since we made Aliyah. Um, but time doesn't stand still. And as I ride my bike around the edge of Maale Adumim 3 or 4 times a week, it's clear that the view is changing, and there are um, Bedouin homes, Bedouin dwellings in areas that were previously just barren desert. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about that. We've got two great speakers. Naomi Kahn will speak first. She's the director of the International Division of Regavim, which is a truly amazing organization that is leading the way in preventing illegal Palestinian settlements throughout Judea and Samaria. And Naomi is going to talk about the problem more broadly than just talking about Maale Adumim. She's going to talk about, put it into a national context and explain how we are just experiencing something that is a microcosm of a bigger problem. And my friend and colleague, Jeff Prawer, will follow Naomi. I'll introduce him in a moment or two when Naomi has presented. But suffice to say that Jeff will be talking about the case study of how people locally here in Maale Adumim are dealing with the problem. And just a little bit of context, if you can see my picture in the background is the view from my Mirpeset here in Maale Adumim. The top of the hill in the background, that's Mount Scopus. So we are literally a stone's throw away from the capital city of the state of Israel. Naomi, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's wonderful to be back with the AJA. This is not my first visit, but a topic that we have not yet discussed, and I'm eager to show everyone what our findings are regarding Judea and Samaria. I'd just like to preface by saying that we do what we do throughout the entire land of Israel, from the Negev to the north, everywhere in between, including Jerusalem, and also in Judea and Samaria. So what we do is go out into the field, start on the ground and see what's actually happening, who's using Israel's land resources, for what purposes, and then take a step back, connect the dots, and try to understand the bigger picture, the policy picture, and then to impact policy at the national level in order to promote a Zionist land use vision and policy moving forward. So I'd like to share some maps and images with you all to give you some context. I'm going to try to share my screen now. Yes. And I hope you're seeing that. So we're going to talk very, very briefly about what makes something legal or illegal in Judea and Samaria. The legal situation is extremely complicated, as you are all aware. In 1967, when Israel returned to this territory, Israeli law was not extended here. So the law of the land is enforced by the state of Israel in certain areas, but according to a combination of legal frameworks that pre-existed the state or are military in nature. So we'll have a closer look at all of that as we move forward. What makes something legal or illegal? We're going to take a very quick walk through 100 years of history. This is the map upon which the mandate for Palestine was based. This is the British government's survey of the entire Levant. You see the pink areas here in front of you. That was what was set aside and eventually enshrined in law in the British mandate as the borders for the Jewish homeland in Palestine to become the state of Israel. This map was based on the biblical map of where the 12 tribes actually lived. And interesting things happened to this map, but that was the vision that was accepted internationally. And some interesting things about who accepted it. This is a photo from the San Remo conference. This is Chaim Weizmann on the left and Emir Faisal on the right. The Arab representative presented this map of the area to be ceded from the larger Arab area of the Middle East for a Jewish homeland. So this is not the Jewish vision, nor is it the British vision. This was the Arab vision for the Jewish presence in the Middle East. And as you can see, this line running right down the middle is the Jordan River. It included territory on both sides of the Jordan, everything up until the Hijaz Railway. So there was no question among the Arab leadership at the time in the pre-state area that this was historic Jewish land. This is where the Jews had been and where they should return. This was enshrined in law in the League of Nations mandate for Palestine. And the area was actually tremendously extended. This is what was eventually approved as the British mandate for Palestine, a massive amount of area. The British did not double the size of the mandated territory because they loved the Jewish people, but rather because they didn't want the French mandate, which was here, to be bigger than their own. So they took more territory in order to be able to do what they did next, which was to divide that territory. This is the infamous note to the mandate, Article 25, that essentially separated over almost 80% of the territory and created Jordan. This area to the east of the Jordan was taken off of the Jewish homeland and handed over as the first two-state solution for the Israel-Arab conflict. So this is the internationally recognized borders of Israel. And why am I giving you this history lesson? This is a very crucial point. Everything that you see here, everything to the west of the Jordan, are the internationally recognized borders of the state of Israel. And that has not changed since 1922. No matter what happened in terms of wars, in terms of peace treaties, these are the only internationally recognized borders of the state of Israel. Just to show you exactly what it looks like on a more easily read map, Transjordan became the Kingdom of Jordan. This area was ceded to Jordan, and everything to the west of the Jordan was Israeli territory. This is the results of the 1948 war, where Jordan illegally occupied and eventually annexed territories to the west. And this is what is now known as the West Bank. The nations of the world, including your own, did not recognize the Jordanian occupation and annexation, but when Israel returned to these territories in 1967, it refrained from extending Israeli law. So that is the complication with which we are dealing now. The map remained the same until the famous signing of the Oslo Accords in the late 1990s, 1995, 1997, 1999, three series of international accords known as the Oslo Accords were signed and divided the territory this way. So this is what the map should look like. These darkened areas are areas of Palestinian Authority control, and all of the yellow areas are Area C, the area under full Israeli jurisdiction. This is what the map should look like, as I say, but it doesn't. And that's where we come in. In reality, in 2009, this man, who was the prime minister of the Palestinian Authority, Salam Fayyad, issued a new plan called Ending the Occupation, Establishing the State, or as it is known, the Fayyad Plan. Essentially discarding the Oslo framework, announcing that the Oslo framework was over, presenting the new vision for a de facto creation of the Palestinian state to, this is Federica Mogherini, the High Representative of the European Union, as you can see here, in full violation of international law and the international treaty known as the Oslo Accords, which had been signed by the Palestinians and witnessed by the European Union. The Palestinian Authority officially discarded the Oslo framework, and ever since has been building the Palestinian state de facto on the ground. This is not a coincidence. It's not the result of some sort of housing crisis. What we're seeing on the ground is a very carefully planned and executed program of annexation. And it starts out looking extremely innocent. This is the key to the whole thing. When Salam Fayyad announced the Fayyad plan, he also said that the Bedouin are the foot soldiers of Palestinian independence. They are easily manipulated, they have no political voice, and they only need one thing in order to stay in place as a human chess piece on a large playing board. What they need is water. And so the Palestinian Authority placed water tankers in strategic locations all through Judea and Samaria in order to create Bedouin outposts. And very, very quickly, the European Union, as you see here, began to support these outposts, to provide them with these structures, to pay for the people to stay there, and to give them diplomatic protection, even though they are illegal and a clear violation of both the letter and spirit of international law. These are some of the countries that are most active in creating these illegal outposts. Everyone's in on the act. Some are more active than others. I'm showing you here in the background footage that we took using our drones over 10 years ago, closer to 20 years ago. What you see on your left is Maale Adumim. This is a review of the beginning of the illegal outposts in the Adumim region. You'll notice they aren't hooked up to anything. They have no sewage, electricity, running water. They have no logical reason for being where they are, other than the fact that they're creating a physical presence that is an extremely strategic threat. Let's look at what they look like now. They don't stay these tiny little shacks. They become massive structures, permanent homes, luxury resorts. All of these are illegal and built on Israeli state land, adjacent to Jewish communities and major highways, army bases. See in the background, there are 800 of these structures that have spilled over from an Arab neighborhood of Jerusalem and will soon be connecting up with all of those Bedouin outposts in the Maale Adumim area. None of this is coincidental, as I mentioned. What you're looking at here is a study that we published soon after the outbreak of the Swords of Iron War, October 7th last year. We simply took the lesson of the invasion of Israel along the Gaza border and applied it all along the border, quote unquote, our security buffer zone with Judea and Samaria. The area of this interface is dozens of times bigger, longer, and more varied than that with Gaza, which is a very small border. And we found that in the area that is supposed to be a sterile zone that would allow Israel to respond against an attack coming from Palestinian Authority-controlled areas, there are almost 20,000 illegal structures. They are sometimes literally within an arm's length of Jewish communities all along the seamline areas. They were placed here not coincidentally. There's a strategic plan behind all of this, and that is what Israel has we at Regavim have been trying to force the government of Israel to contend with, the strategic threat that all of this presents. Now, just to focus in on the area of Maale Adumim, this is Khan al-Ahmar. It's one of the most famous outposts. It's the one that we've been in court for over 14 years. It is along the road just outside Prawer Adumim on Route 1. This is the main highway. Jerusalem is here. I'll show you a better map soon. But what we're trying to, what is important to understand is why Khan al-Ahmar and all of these Bedouin outposts in the area. Each of these dots, by the way, is illegal construction. We have documented every single one and have gone to court about dozens of them, trying to force the government of Israel to enforce the law here. But they're not coincidental. They're not here because these Bedouin had nowhere else to live. Over 80%, almost 80% of the, no, I correct myself, over 70% of the territory already under Palestinian Authority control is empty and available for development and for creation of housing for these people. But the Palestinian Authority keeps them out here, in many cases in subhuman conditions, in order to take over this territory, this strategic territory that connects Ramallah, Bethlehem, and Jericho. All of this in here. And Maale Adumim is right in the crosshairs. Let's look at it a little more closely. This is a close-up of a map. It's kind of hard to see. This is Maale Adumim. Jerusalem is here. The only area that is still not completely overtaken by this illegal construction, the only area that Israel can protect its capital city and connect to its eastern border is right here, called E1. And that is where Maale Adumim stands. That's why Maale Adumim is a quiet battleground. All of these things and much, much more are available for further research and for much more in-depth analysis on our website. You can scan this barcode with your phone and get to our website, or follow us on WhatsApp, Telegram, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Our website is a wealth of information and resources, including maps, analysis, and updates on our progress in combating this illegal takeover of strategic land in the E1 area and beyond. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions afterwards.
Thank you so much, Naomi. Thank you for that overview that really shows puts Maale Adumim in context. Now the case that is taking place right here in Maale Adumim as we try to deal peacefully with threats. And I'd like to introduce my colleague, my friend, my neighbor, Jeff Prawer. Jeff is a member of a prominent Melbourne Jewish family with interests both in Melbourne and here in Australia. Jeff made Aliyah back in 1980, and in fact he's been a resident of Maale Adumim for just under 40 years. For those of you who follow events on university campuses, Jeff is actually the brother of Melbourne University physics professor Stephen Prawer, who has been in the news, unfortunately, in relation to his support for Israel. So, Jeff, take it away.
Thank you, everyone. Let me quickly share. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Not yet. Yes.
Okay, so thank you very much for this opportunity. So even though I am a Melbourneite, I definitely am very glad to meet this organization. It's certainly an opportunity to explain what's going on in Maale Adumim. And I'll try and put us in context and then zoom into what's going on locally. in terms of the illegal Bedouin encampments around Maale Adumim and what that means for the land reserves in the future. So you heard from Naomi about the context. Maale Adumim is beyond being a home that I've lived in for 40 years and Jewish settlement that was established before that. There was nothing there at all. We have aerial photos, completely barren, and a beautiful city in the Judean desert. It is part of a strategic play by the Palestinian Authority, and we locally have recognized this and are trying in various peaceful ways to mitigate and fight this threat, which is a threat not just for Maale Adumim and our home and our families and the extension of Jewish settlement and Zionism, but also for the wider context of Israel. So we feel a responsibility in that sense too. So I won't go over this slide again because Naomi pointed out. So Khan al-Ahmar is in this triangle. Actually, ironically, in the news, they're talking about Khan al-Ahmar, which is an illegal Bedouin settlement, and saying that Maale Adumim is an illegal suburb which is encroaching on Khan al-Ahmar. That's the narrative that is being created in the international press by the European Union and many other countries and organizations who are trying to join these different pieces of Area A and B and squeeze Maale Adumim and also threaten the access of Maale Adumim, which sits on this highway. You can see that black highway, the highway that connects Jerusalem to the Jordan Valley. So I'd like to talk drilling down to this specific use case, what's happening around our city, Maale Adumim, what can we do about it and why it is effective? Because I've been approached by many people who are somewhat skeptical, and I hope to demonstrate that this is a very effective method, and then introduce Adumim Ranch, which is an educational agricultural initiative that we've established pretty recently, actually, over the last 6 months or so, in order to peacefully approach this problem. And I'll start with what's happening around the city. So this is just a snapshot. This is actually from a few months ago. You can see the center is the Maale Adumim city limits. The blue line is the line of what we call the, as she put, the line of the official jurisdiction of the city. So within that blue line, according to Israeli law, the city can expand within those land reserves. And within all those different areas, we see encampments growing daily. They're established there. And unfortunately, as Naomi pointed out, we raise the flag that they exist, and they say, okay, we'll come by. The authorities don't come by. And after 30 days, they say, well, according to the 100-year-old or something Ottoman law, we can no longer remove those settlements. So we are faced with a problem at the national level that Regavim is doing an outstanding job driving that at the legal level. We at the local level are attempting to focus in on what we can do about it. After the 7th of October, just to point out my personal story, I felt like it was either become moved to despair or ask the questions, what can each of us individually do about this? So this approach, you can see the red dots, which are a drill down of what's going on in Maale Adumim. The illegal Bedouin encampments are systematically established within the municipal boundaries. This is a coordinated effort, and in each of these areas, the Bedouins and the Palestinian Authority are creating false narratives as if these people had lived there for before the times of Abraham, and they have their own local customs, and they're really establishing a false narrative in order to block the natural growth of the city. It's not innocent nomadism. Perhaps many, many years ago it was, but now these people are paid. We know personally many Bedouins who live in the neighboring town of Azariah and have been paid to come and set up a tent and set up sheep farming. So they have where to live, but they've come around the city and they are trying to establish facts on the ground. And this is a situation that we've been noticing for many years. I'm also a bike rider and going around and seeing this. actually get used to it. It's something that when you see it in the background, you don't understand the threat until we understand also after the events of 7th of October that we can't be sure about the allegiances of these people, especially since they have association with the Palestinian Authority. And we know for a fact that some of them report on the activities of the police station that is at the top of E1, and that's the regional police station. And they can literally take out their binoculars and track what's going on in the city. So it's a security threat as well as a settlement threat. So what can we do about it? I'm not sure this is the official statement. I believe these are the vectors that explain why what I'll explain about agricultural farming and urban development of these educational programs is so effective. So first of all, agricultural ranches around the city, they deter the Bedouin sheep herders by reducing the motivation. Many of them are sheep herders. About 6 months ago, when I went up to the site of the farm, they had their sheep and kids were riding around in their bicycles in Maale Adumim land reserve. So once they see the existence of Jewish farms on Jewish land that's totally legal for us to be there, that's a deterrence from a cultural perspective. I know that I grew up in Australia. In Australia, the rule of law and how the legal system works. But in the Middle East, I've learned over many years since I've been here, demonstration of sovereignty is often not about maps. It's about foots on the ground, and the Bedouins actually respect that because that's their culture. So if you establish a foothold, if you are in a particular place, then for many Bedouins that means that you're demonstrating that you're the sovereign, and they will avoid confrontation. Of course, once they've established a presence, they will fight to remain there. So part of the action here is preemptive. Once established, I know that Naomi and Regavim have their work cut out for them, because even in the case of judicial rulings in favor of demolishing these Bedouin encampments, the government is not enforcing it. So I think I saw a question about that, but unfortunately we're dealing with that. So part of the strategy is preemptive. I'm not saying we aren't also, and Regavim are not fighting the battle to remove these settlements, but clearly it's easier to be preemptive. And this approach that we'll talk about with establishing agricultural farms has been extremely effective in many areas of Judea and Samaria, such as Gush Etzion and beyond. So what's the strategy? I'd say there are 4 points to this strategy. This is a view of Maale Adumim. The blue line is the outer area of the municipality control. We want to establish a green band of agricultural ranches around the periphery. The first one is the pilot one is number 1. Actually, E1 that was referred to as a famous area of contention is number 3. I'm not saying that that's the order, but we started with number 1 because of various technical considerations. So we want to foster educational and tourist activities and strong community involvement, because it's clear that the presidents of every place here in Israel, in Yehuda v'Shomron, in Maale Adumim, have to really demonstrate that we care about the land, we're involved in it, and this is these two strategies are hopefully complementary to the monitoring, the ongoing monitoring of the Area C illegal settlement that Regavim is spearheading the legal action both at the local level and at the national level. And of course, the city continues to grow, but it grows at the natural rate. Obviously, it's expensive to create these plans, and we want to make sure that we've preempted any kind of land grabbing, so that as the city expands into its land reserves, we don't have to encounter the requirement to move the Bedouin settlers. By the way, the government has established various areas for the Bedouins to move to, even the ones that don't have other residences, but because of the political angle, they are not moving to those areas. So a little bit about Adumim Ranch. This is an education and agricultural initiative. We have established it probably not more than 6 months ago, although there's been talk about doing this for many years. And I'm personally involved in promoting this idea, helping with community involvement, being spokesman, and hoping to raise funds to continue this completely volunteer activity. So this is a little bit about the vision statement. We won't need to read the whole thing, but this is actually looking at a view out to the east from Maale Adumim, a beautiful panoramic vista, and we're establishing the ranch here as um, part of an aim to have olive groves and vineyards, herds of sheep, observation points, encourage tourism, and focus on education and values of connecting the community to the city's desert home, protecting the environment. This is completely operated by student volunteers in the pre-military academy. That's an educational organization, an NPO, an NGO, and it complements well the values of Jewish settlement, taking responsibility, and provides opportunities for diverse fields of educational activity. And the presence of hundreds of acres surrounding Maale Adumim will protect the land reserves in a peaceful way, hopefully, against hostile encroachment. And it really embodies good old flavored Zionism. Just as an anecdote, in Australia, the closest I got to planting a tree was those blue J&F boxes with the coins that we collected over many years. And it's a wonderful feeling to be able to actually participate, feel the soil in my hands. This is a view of the plan. Some of these things are already existing, and some of them are in plan. So the red box is the educational center. So that is actually planned by the city, and there are city plans drawn up for that. But the area beyond that, the green circle, we plan to have a boundary of olive groves. We planted the first ones. You can see here on the left, and I included it here intentionally, the Bedouin encampment, illegal Bedouin encampments at the valley right at the bottom, and as they have been undisturbed there, are making their way up the hill. So the idea is to reverse that. So here we've got 3 olive groves that are being planted, and I'll show you some other pictures here, a vista lookout. But of course, this is all in planning phases, but we have some pretty amazing results, even though this has all been done with very little funding and local community support and volunteerism. So we had the first pilot grove. There were people there bringing in tanks of water. Then we hooked up the water supply. We were able to get cooperation to do that. So to preempt the question, we're, let's say, somewhat in coordination with the city council, although the city council is not officially promoting this, and there's a lot of politics involved. The youth volunteers are busy digging trees. We also had community events, and the people were truly emotional about the ability to plant the grove. One of the first groves was the memorial grove for all of the Maale Adumim fallen soldiers from the 7th of October. And we're also working in close collaboration with the Susum farm, which is the first sheep farm in the area. And the combination of olive trees and sheep farms has been proven to be very effective in mitigating the encroachment. So we're at the first phase of this project. We've got an establishment budget. You can see the line items. I don't know if I have time, and I want to leave time for questions, but basically all of the operation of the farm is done through volunteerism. What we do need help for is for establishing infrastructure, buying trees. We need to guard the place. It's not under any hostility, but obviously, if there wasn't anybody there, then the Bedouins might be attracted to come to steal sheep or pull out trees. And a very kind of modest living stipend for basically people who are passionate about this, who are willing to live on site, and then also support things like tourism and a local tented area, what they call a khan, which is ironic because that's a word from the Bedouins. But in fact, it indicates our desire to involve all of Am Yisrael, all of the nation of Israel, and you're all very much invited to come and visit. And I'm a high-tech guy, but I work out of home, so just pick up the phone and I'll take you out to the farm. And so this is all funded through a non-profit organization. The budget is completely separate. The funding organization is called Bet Moreshet. For those of you, we'll provide the link afterwards, and you can scan the QR codes in English, I think, on the left for information regarding how we can promote this. And I really appreciate your time, and wonderful to see organization like this in Australia fighting the good fight in terms of protecting the interests and the future of the Jewish people in Australia and in Israel. So I'll stop there and ask Mark to take over to adjudicate questions, or however this works.
If I might just make one very small correction, Jeff, Khan is actually from Turkish, not Bedouin. It's a Turkish.
Okay. All right, that's good. Okay, thank you.
Bravo.
Naomi's always good at keeping me kosher.
Well,
very good.
Thank you so much, both of you, for that excellent talk, which obviously AJA fully supports the message you're sharing. We're going to go to David now, who's going to give a quick update, and then we'll come to Q&A. So just a reminder to everyone, please raise your hand if you want to ask a question. I can see we have a lot of questions and a lot in the chat, so we'll get to as many as we can.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert. And as we do each week at the end of this event, if you're not yet actively supporting AJA, please go to the website. Make sure that you've signed up to the email list. I noticed a question in the chat as to whether there'll be a copy of this presentation. We always, unless there's a technical problem, do a recording and send it out in the subsequent email so that you can review the content of those presentations at your leisure. I want to thank all those that supported our recent charity campaign. We still need ongoing support, but the charity campaign is now closed, so you can, if you're inclined to support AJA, do so via the website. Next week, we're going to have a general political analysis from Gadi Taub, who's a very articulate and informed commentator about Israel being at the crossroads with the US election, with the state of conflicts in Gaza and in the north and Iran, and all that will be covered and discussed. For those in Sydney, we do have a very special event coming up. We are hosting the chairman of the Ayn Rand Institute for a live event in Sydney on Monday. The tickets are available for a very modest cost, and the link is sent out in our emails and is also available on our Facebook page. And in the last day or so, we are able to confirm that Ross Cameron, who's now the chairman of the Libertarian Party of New South Wales, will be joining our event and also making comments. So this is a great chance to hear a very distinguished Jewish intellectual, and the whole theme is about personal freedoms. That's probably enough from me, Robert.
Yeah, that's enough. For those who subscribe, you'll see we do have another event as well, and you can find more details in the email. All right, so the first question is, we've heard some comments that support from government is not as quick, and one big challenge is dealing with the Israeli government. It's a bit disappointing, and considering, for example, someone like Bezalel Smotrich, one of the co-founders of Regavim, is in the government. So could both of you maybe address what else the government could do, or what they're not doing, and what's the situation there?
I'll be happy to take that question. It's actually, I couldn't have asked for a better setup. So imagine for a moment, I showed you only very, very briefly one of the support signs, the West Bank Protection Consortium sign of all the governments that are actively involved in creating the illegal outposts all through Judea and Samaria, and actively supporting Palestinian Authority annexation of Israel's state lands in Area C. Imagine for a moment what the situation is like when the state of Israel is faced with the massive pressure and condemnation if and when it does actually enforce the law. So, as Jeff mentioned, things that once something is standing on the ground, it's much, much more difficult for the state of Israel to disassemble it or to demolish it, because these structures, these outposts, have massive European support, and foreign support often translates into things like accusations of war crimes and dispossession and racial discrimination and all these other things of which Israel is being accused. That is the main point of pressure, the main leverage that has kept the government of Israel from actively addressing this threat. Now there has been a shift, there has been a change, partly because we're already being accused of all these heinous crimes. We're already paying the price, and we're losing the territory at the same time. So the state of Israel essentially, I think at this point, has realized it has nothing to lose by actually standing up for its own legal rights in this area.
Yeah, well, that's encouraging. Next question.
I'll add one more thing, sorry. Our most recent report, which has not been fully published yet, but if you follow us, you will see that it will be released next week. Our most recent study, which we conduct twice a year, a complete analysis of every single structure on the ground in Judea and Samaria, indicates that under the most recent government, the rate of illegal construction has been slashed in an unprecedented manner. And new illegal construction in Judea and Samaria for the first time in decades has drastically slowed. There's still more new construction, but the rate of construction has been impacted tremendously. So we are making progress, and this government has taken responsibility and is beginning to turn the tide. So
Amazing.
Follow our website or our other channels for the precise numbers and analysis and mapping of all of that.
That's really good to hear. All right, Alan,
Yes.
would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Robert, and thank you to the Regavim people. I want to ask you about the term, quote, international law, because everybody likes to talk about it, including our own government. So I want to ask you, how do you debate with those people who like to quote international law or the fake international law? Do you try to introduce facts, or is that inevitably just a waste of time?
It is certainly not a waste of time. It's all we have, actually. Facts are facts. Law is law, and that's what we deal in. So although it is more or less like trying to empty the ocean with a paper cup, what we do is stand there with that paper cup and we shout at the top of our lungs, and we bring some of the documents that I wanted to bring today. Had I had another hour, I would have brought all of the legal documents that exist to and bring them that have bearing on what is called international law. But to begin, everyone who's watching here should understand that the term international law is essentially a fiction. There is no such thing. International law consists really of a collection of treaties, a collection of conventions. Each country decides for itself which ones it will adopt, which ones it will honor, which conventions it will become a part of. And that is not a binding law, and there is really no body of international law. In the way that this term and this concept have been used against the state of Israel is unprecedented and is not even vaguely similar to how it is applied anywhere else in the world. And it is time for the state of Israel to begin to push back against that malign use of these invented doctrines, and not allow this narrative to cloud the conversation. Israel has, under international law as it exists, meaning the treaties to which we are signatories, has rights which we are not protecting properly.
If I could just add, though, I think in parallel, we have to also create facts on the ground, because since the international community does not really necessarily always listen to international law, even have a dialogue. Having created reality, that the Palestinian Authority has been very successful creating an alternative reality, an alternative narrative. So as we create and enhance Jewish settlement around these areas, that helps to fight the narrative, because it isn't always a fair fight. So preempting it. And it's also easier in international law, I believe, to establish a presence than to move somebody, right? There's a lot more legal action required to.
But not always. If
What
you
we're
don't have the
finding here,
legal grounds, if you have the legal grounds upon which you can create that presence, then all you have to do is stand behind it and state your legal claims clearly and repeatedly and adamantly. And that is what we try to force the Israeli government to do. We sue the Israeli government every day in dozens of cases, sue them for failing to uphold Israeli law and international law that is in our best interest.
Okay, now, I see we've got so many people with their hands up, so let's keep the questions very brief so we can get to as many as possible. Joe, you're up next. Would you like to unmute?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Jeff, for the kind invitation. Naomi, my question is to you. Well, first of all, thank you for using the term Judea and Samaria instead of West Bank, etc., mentioning San Remo, all those really unknown things. What do you think about the British mandate for Palestine being a trust?
The British mandate for Palestine was part of a larger mandate system. And the interesting thing is that the other countries that were created under the very same mandatory system, no one has ever questioned their boundaries, their legality, their legitimacy, only Israel. And you have to ask yourself why that is. I think we know why that is. But it was considered to be a sacred trust placed in the hands of the British Empire by humanity as a whole to bring about a just resolution to an unanswered historical failure. And that was to allow the Jewish people their national homeland and sovereignty in that national homeland. So yes, it was trust placed in the hands of the British. I recently gave a full webinar on all of this, the legal documents that essentially create the international legal picture for Israel's legitimacy in general and for its rights in Judea and Samaria. Anyone who's interested in in seeing that full 45-minute presentation that presents all of the legal documents that are relevant, it's available on YouTube. You can also just reach out to me and I'll send you links. But our YouTube channel has the full playlist of our webinars on these topics. It's called Regavim Advocacy Project, or just contact me or look on our website and it's all accessible there. It's a very important basic information that I think not only should everyone here today educate themselves with and arm themselves with, but the government of Israel must restate all of these very, very basic principles loudly and clearly. And we are trying to force the government to do so.
Solomon, you're up next.
Thank you very much. Firstly, Naomi, the document that you were able to put up in that presentation, I'd be appreciative if that could be separately available over and above the video which David's releasing. But thank you to both of you. We've seen in the recent days the conflict in Syria, which will no doubt have impacts on future peace in the region, given that Syria's government is Iranian and Russian-based, and its protagonists against them are associated with Al-Qaeda and the like. It's like, which one is better? Neither, of course, but what's the future for peace in the region?
It's a huge question. It's way beyond the scope of what we've come to discuss today. Regavim certainly does not take a side in any of those foreign conflicts. I can tell you that not always is the enemy of my enemy my friend. And that's the situation we see right now in Syria. The internal conflict there is between two very, very bad actors. Instability in the region is always bad for Israel. And the people who are now trying to unseat Assad are certainly no friends of ours. We have a lot to be worried about on that front as well. I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah, we might deal with that topic a bit more next week. Shoshana, you're up next. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes. First of all, thank you very much. And I'm fearful of asking, but I'll ask anyway. Not just the international media, but Israeli media as well talks about settler violence. Can you please explain what that's all about and dispel my anxiety?
I wish I could dispel your anxiety. Again, this is a very, very big topic. I gave an hour-long webinar on this as well. It's available on our YouTube channel. We are about to release a full several hundred-page report analyzing the data upon which this entire narrative is based. What I can tell you, just really on the tip of the iceberg as it relates to today's topic, is that the vast majority of incident reports that are posted by Israeli media, Israeli nonprofits such as B'Tselem and Breaking the Silence and the United Nations itself, most of these incidents occur specifically in these illegal outposts that were created, placed in strategic areas in order to create this confrontation and to push Israel back. So it is no coincidence that the settler violence narrative is born and fueled in these illegal outposts. Anyone who wants to learn more, contact me. I'll send you some of our resources and make sure that you get our forthcoming report, which is already in its final pre-production stages.
Yeah, everyone should follow up on that, and I'll give you all a sneak peek as well. In 2 weeks, on December 18, we'll be having Professor Eugene Kontorovich speak some of the legal issues around this, the myth of settler violence. Could be interesting as well. Jeff, you're up next.
Shalom, Naomi. About 12 minutes ago, you mentioned about Israel obeying international law, and about 13 minutes ago, you mentioned that international law was a chimera, or used another word. Given that I agree with the former, how can you say the latter? You've got to be careful with the language. There is no international law. Even the Red Cross has got its own version of international law. And I reckon the local Dog Catchers Association of Israel has got its own international law. So please stop saying Israel obeys international law. And anyway, the most important thing is to know that Israel has got the most magnificent legal system all set up for all the enemies of Israel to use and for Israel to not use. I find this very depressing.
Well, it's certainly depressing, and a major element of what we do and a major area of our activity before the outbreak of the war had to do with the judicial reform. Although it has been sorely misrepresented as to what it was meant to accomplish and what it was not, and was used as weaponized, really, the entire issue. It was clear to us that many of the problems with how we are losing territory throughout the land of Israel and how we are losing ground nationally and internationally stem from the manipulation of the legal system. In terms of there being or not being international law, what I said was that international law exists only insofar as you have treaties between nations, and Israel scrupulously upholds the treaties that it has. So it does, in that sense, uphold international law. And the problem really here in Judea and Samaria that we've discussed today is that the state of Israel has not figured out what to do if the treaty to which it is a signatory is being blatantly and consistently violated by the other party to the treaty. Once Israel decides how it's going to respond to those violations, then it will actually turn the tide, but it has not decided yet what to do in that situation. And I will just point out very, very quickly that the Oslo framework is a massive, had massive impact on the ground, But Oslo itself, none of the three parts of the Oslo Accord had any of them, any clauses relating to violation. What happens when one side rejects or violates those treaties and essentially rejects or violates international law? So we may be very, very good business people as the Jewish nation, but this was a terrible bargaining idea and a terrible treaty signed with no exit clause and no clause for sanctions or in case of violation. And that's something that we need to address, but that's beyond the scope of today's conversation.
We're coming close to time, so we might have time for one last question. Leon, if you want to quickly ask your question. Just get you to unmute.
Need to unmute, Leon.
We seem to be having some technical issues there. So I might ask each of our speakers to give a closing message, message what can Jews in Australia do to support the important work you're doing, and also place in the chat any links where people can follow. For anyone watching live on Zoom, you'll be able to see that in the chat here. So yeah, maybe over to both of our speakers just for a closing message.
Okay, so maybe I'll take that. So after hearing Naomi speak for the first time, I was my mouth was completely open. I mean, it was obviously not news, but then once you get past the initial shock, we understand that we're in for the long haul. The people of Israel. I think there is plenty of things to be done, both in terms of supporting Regavim and the national level and the awareness and going down the path of the legal avenues. But I think it's also very important for Australian community to support these grassroots efforts to create facts on the ground where we exercise our rights on the land, because we simply can't wait for the national growth of the city. We're in a silent, insidious war. So we need to establish these communities. At the same time, if we try and build on them, then that attracts the ire of the authorities. So these agricultural farms in Maale Adumim and all over Israel and all over Judea and Samaria are a very, very good cause. And I believe that those two elements together work complementary to establish a better future for us. So I also would like to just say thank you very much to the organizers, and on the slide with contact details, feel free to reach out to me anytime, email, WhatsApp for further information, since we didn't have a lot of time here. Thank you.
Jeff, you made a specific suggestion, I think, about inviting people to visit. And I think one of the best things that Australians can do when you see what is on the ground, not only does it inform you, but you go there, you go to the local businesses, you spend a few dollars, you're supporting the building of the community. So anybody who's got a trip to Israel, either planned or in the future, make sure you go into Yehuda and Shomron. We have contacts there. You can visit some of these places which are a little off the major tourist track, but a lot of fun and very informative, and you meet some great people such as Jeff and Mark.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I'd like to reiterate that invitation. Love to host as many Australians as possible here in Maale Adumim. We have a lot to offer, a lot to see, great restaurants, great people, and of course the Ranch Project, which is definitely worth seeing. And we're only a half an hour from Jerusalem, so make sure that we're on your itinerary next time you're in Israel.
If I may, Regavim also is eager to host people to come out and see the territory or any part of it that interests you through our eyes. See what it is that we see when we go out and document the land use issues everywhere in Israel. But before that, and even aside from that, and in addition to that, the most important thing that people can do in Australia or anywhere else is to educate themselves, understand what is really at the heart of the issues that you're reading about in the news, and be able to educate yourself to the level but you're not taken in by false news, by misrepresentations, or all sorts of other fake things that are going on. The best way to do that, again, is to read, listen, follow, and ask questions. And that is one of the main reasons that I am here, to make those resources available, to explain what it is that we're seeing, and to try to arm people with enough information, real information, facts, data, law, to be able to fight the good fight wherever you are.
Thank you. Thank you to our speakers tonight, to Jeff, to Naomi, and to Mark. It was an honor to have you all. Thank you to everyone for joining and listening. We'll see everyone next week. And yeah, please go follow these organizations and do what you can. So thank you, everyone. Have a good night.